Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and we're going to continue the series on my car buying tips. And if you hear really heavy breathing, again, it's my dog, which is just right there in front of, well, just right by the camera at least. But anyways, today we are going to talk about a trade-in secret. Now, earlier in the week, I talked about my tips, my 5 tips when you are trading in a vehicle. If you haven't seen that video, please go and watch that video quickly. I'll include a link to that in the description. Well, hopefully I will remember to include a link to that video in the description. Go watch that video first and then return to watch this video, because this is kind of like an extension on that video. Just certain things that are a little bit extra that are kind of trading in, but, well, kind of not. So the huge thing that I'm going to be talking about today is going to be what's called an in and out. Now, before I talk about what an in and out is, I need to first kind of, I guess, frame who this is going to apply to. I'm not sure if places outside the US do this, so if you live outside the US, I don't know if this would be able to help you out or not. There are certain places in the US where this doesn't help you out. So for example, Montana and Oregon, they don't have sales tax on vehicles. I know that, so it doesn't help them out. California also, they do have sales tax on vehicles, but they don't give you tax credit when you trade in, and that's gonna be important later on in this video. So if you live in California, sorry, but this doesn't help you out, and it's a sad day. But anyways, what is an in and out? An in and out is when you sell your car to a private party, so you do not trade it into the dealership, but you have the dealership facilitate that trade process. Now, if you're all wondering, why would you do this? The reason you do this is so that you get tax credit. Now, what tax credit is whenever you buy a vehicle whenever you do buy a vehicle, you get obviously state taxes on that vehicle. So here in Utah, the state tax rate on a purchase is 7.25%. So if you buy a $10,000 vehicle, you have to pay $725 in taxes. Now, what tax credit does is it completely gets rid of the taxes for the value of the trade-in. So let's just say that, again, we're buying a $10,000 car, or sorry, let's say we're buying a $20,000 car, just to make math easy on me, because I haven't had any food today and we're all over the place. But let's say that you buy a $20,000 car, and let's say that you trade in a $10,000 car on that. Normally, buying that $20,000 car here in Utah, with the tax rate being 7.25%, you're normally going to have to pay $1,450 in taxes. But because you traded in that $10,000 car, it basically gets rid of the taxes. You only pay the difference number, which is now $725. So instead of paying the $1,450, you only pay the $725. That's how tax credit works, is you take the purchase price of the vehicle and then you subtract the trade-in value from that vehicle, then you multiply the tax rate against that number, the difference number between the two, and that's how much you are going to pay in taxes. Now, what does this have to do with an in and out? It's actually pretty cool, and stop sniffing my tripod. But what this has to do with an in and out is when you sell to a private party, most states don't let you get tax credit. They just consider it a retail transaction, essentially. And I know there's certain circumstances where you basically can still get tax credit, but most of the time you're not technically trading in the vehicle. You're selling a vehicle to a private party, then you're buying a vehicle at a dealership. And so since it doesn't always kind of go right together, a lot of times it's kind of hard to prove tax credit. And so in those situations, what a lot of people do is actually what's called an in and out. And this didn't happen very often with me working at the dealership, but the times that it did happen, I saw how much money it saved people, and it was just absolutely astounding. So think about it this way. If you go and trade in your car, you have the trade-in value, right? And usually trade-in value, well, not usually, but pretty much all the time, trade-in value is going to be less than retail. If you're able to sell a car to a private party, chances are you can get more money for it. But the problem nowadays is with states that you have tax credit in, the tax credit usually is the difference between trade-in and retail a lot of the time. So then most people just don't try to sell a car at a private party. I personally don't, because on my last vehicle that I traded in, trade-in value was in the low 40s. The amount that I could retail it for was like, so I think trade-in value was like 41 or 2. Retail was like 44. And tax credit was over $2,000 because of how expensive the vehicle was. So then I would actually lose money by selling it privately because I wouldn't get as much tax credit, right? Now, here's where the In-N-Out comes in. The In-N-Out gives you the best of both worlds, because if you get a little bit more for private sell and you do an In-N-Out, you still get tax credit and you get the higher amount for trading in. Now, how this works with most dealers is, first and foremost, you probably need to have a pretty good relationship with that dealer, because a lot of dealers don't like to do In-N-Outs unless it is a necessity for them to get a car deal. If it's a necessity for them to get a car deal, usually they'll work with you. But a lot of times, if you don't have a great relationship with a dealership, they're just not going to want to do it. They're just going to say, hey, go sell it to them. We don't want to have to deal with it. And that might make you frustrated. And obviously, chances are you need to just go to another dealership at that point. However, right after you've hopefully have a good relationship with this dealership, what you want to do is figure out what the costs are with doing an In-N-Out. And that is very important, because most dealerships are going to want to basically cover their costs in some form, because when they do an In-N-Out, they are basically doing a transaction through their facility. So they have obviously costs with the state, but then there's also just most dealerships have flooring costs, or a lot of them call it, they have a cost called pack and management, which just covers different dealership costs. And just how most dealerships are formatted, they have to put that in every single car they sell. Even if you're selling the car for them, they're still technically selling that car under how all the paperwork essentially works. So what you need to do is find out how much it's going to cost to do an In-N-Out. Depending on the brand that you're working with, depending on the dealership, most dealerships will be anywhere from, maybe they'll do it for free if you're lucky, but chances are it's going to be anywhere from a few $100 to maybe up to $1,000. After you figure out how much it costs to do an In-N-Out, make sure that you do the math and make sure it still makes sense. Because sometimes the cost of doing the In-N-Out just might not be worth the headache and all the paperwork and everything, and you maybe just end up trading the vehicle in. However, if it does make sense, it can get you thousands of dollars more. Because in my circumstance, if I had found someone that was willing to buy my truck, let's say for $45,000, and instead of me trading in for low 40s, I get $45,000, and then I do an In-N-Out, maybe it cost me $1,000, so now I'm getting $44,000, and then I get tax credit on top of that. Well, that percentage is against a higher number. That could have saved me literally thousands of dollars. So I'm out thousands of dollars because I traded the vehicle in instead of doing an In-N-Out on the last car purchase that I did. So yes, it can save you thousands of dollars if you do the math on everything, and obviously make sure that the cost of doing the In-N-Out doesn't completely make it a wash with the tax credit. And chances are, if you do an In-N-Out on a very inexpensive vehicle, this might happen. If you do an In-N-Out on a more expensive vehicle, usually the tax credit, the amount you get is going to be so massive, it's going to cover all the costs. So it's just going to make it so that it makes sense every single time if you can find the right buyer. That's going to be my next thing I'm going to transition to, is just finding the right buyer to do this. Be upfront with the buyer that you're selling this vehicle to, that you want to do an In-N-Out. Explain to them what you're doing, because a lot of the times people will buy from private parties because they're hoping it's going to be less money. Doing an In-N-Out, if you don't eat the costs for that person, then it could potentially be more money for them, and it could take them out of the market of buying your specific car. So just make sure that when you are selling a car privately, just put it in your post. Just say, hey, I'm doing an In-N-Out on this car. So then people know what they're getting themselves into, and maybe put in the post, I'm going to cover the dealership costs. So then they know they're not having to pay any extra money for the vehicle. The other things to take into account, if your vehicle does not pass emissions, most dealerships can't do an In-N-Out with it if you obviously have emissions in your area. If your vehicle can't pass the safety inspection, all the regular state inspections have to be performed on a vehicle for a dealership to do an In-N-Out. So if your vehicle does not pass any of those inspections, you can't do an In-N-Out, and it's not going to help you out with, obviously, saving thousands of dollars on a car purchase. If you have a straight pipe vehicle that you have to put thousands of dollars in catalytic converters in, you're kind of going to have to figure something else out, right? You're going to have to either go buy from a dealership that doesn't have emissions restrictions, which is kind of difficult, or you're just going to have to figure something out. So that really is, I guess, the bread and butter of all of it. If you want to get thousands of dollars more for your trade-in, then do an In-N-Out, and make sure that your state offers tax credit before you look into any of this. Because if your state doesn't offer tax credit, then everything that I said is completely null and void, and you might as well just try to sell your car privately, because then that's how you're going to get the most money for it. But if your state does give you tax credit, then try to find a buyer for your car. Do an in and out with a dealership. Make sure you find the costs associated with doing the in and out. And then once you have everything figured out, do the math, make sure you're ahead. If you are, in my circumstance, I would have been thousands of dollars, a couple thousands of dollar ahead. Dollars, I cannot talk. A couple thousands of dollars ahead. Okay. Yeah, maybe I need to get some breakfast before we finish this video. But yeah, just make sure that you're ahead. As long as you're ahead in this situation, then most of the time it's worth it if you have a good solid buyer. And it actually might make your situation easier because some dealerships have good deals with financing with lenders, and it might make it so that you feel a little bit more comfortable with your buyer because you aren't facilitating the deal with them. At that point, the dealership is arranging the financing for the person that you're buying, that's buying your vehicle. They are making sure that person's legit. They're doing all the stuff that as a private seller can be very stressful. Now that the dealership's taking care of that, it completely takes the stress away because you're not going to get a fraudulent check. You're not going to get any of that. Well, I mean, hopefully you don't work with a dealership. That's a whole nother video again. But anyways, I hope that you get my point. It's hopefully going to take away a lot of stress of selling privately because you won't have to deal with all that stress of, is this person legit? The dealership then has to worry about that. So I hope that helped all of you out, and that is my number one tip for trading in on how to get thousands of dollars more. And I guess it's also my number one tip of how to make trading in a vehicle a little bit less stressful, or how to sell a vehicle privately and make it less stressful. Because yeah, there's kind of that hidden benefit of doing an in and out with the dealership taking the blow if that person's not legit for some reason. But anyways, if you're stopping for the first time, please subscribe, comment down below what you think. I will see all of you in that next video.